Jin-Ho stretched in his chair and glanced at the time display. Just 30 minutes left on his 12-hour shift at the Europa Communication Center. The small outpost, buried beneath 20 kilometers of ice, had been his home for the past 3 years. It wasn't glamorous work, monitoring empty space for signals, running system diagnostics, and occasionally relaying messages to the mining teams exploring Europa's vast subsurface ocean. "Another quiet day in paradise," he muttered, taking a sip of his synthetic coffee. The bitter liquid had long gone cold. The communication center was silent except for the soft hum of equipment. Most of the staff had already left for the recreation deck, leaving Jin-Ho alone with the stars. Through the view screen, Jupiter loomed large, its swirling storms casting a faint orange glow across the room. Humanity had spread throughout the solar system over the past 2 centuries. Mars was now home to 3 major cities. Venus had floating research platforms in its upper atmosphere. The asteroid belt hosted mining operations that supplied the growing interplanetary economy with raw materials. But despite all this expansion, despite the probes sent to nearby star systems, humanity had found no signs of intelligent life. The general consensus was that Earth was alone, at least in this part of the galaxy. Some scientists still argued that life might exist elsewhere, but after 200 years of searching, even the optimists were beginning to doubt. Jin-Ho was inputting his end-of-shift report when the alert sounded. At first, it was just a small spike on one of the arrays pointed toward the Kuiper belt. Jin-Ho almost dismissed it as background radiation, but then the spike grew, forming patterns too regular to be natural. "Computer, analyze incoming signal," Jin-Ho said, suddenly alert. "Signal contains modulated data packets. Pattern suggests artificial origin." The computer responded. Jin-Ho's heart beat faster. "Is this a test?" "Computer, check if this is a scheduled drill." "No scheduled drills in system. Signal origin: approximately 42 astronomical units from Sol, beyond Neptune's orbit." Jin-Ho's fingers flew across the control panel. "Redirect all available arrays to coordinates. Maximum sensitivity. Begin recording." The signal grew stronger as more arrays locked onto its source. It wasn't using any known human communication protocol. The patterns were too complex, too alien. "Computer, begin translation attempt using all available linguistic models." "Working. Unknown language structure. Attempting pattern recognition." Jin-Ho took a deep breath and opened a direct channel to his supervisor, Director Park. "Director, we have an unidentified signal from beyond Neptune's orbit. It's not one of ours." Park's face appeared on screen, sleep lines still visible on her face. "Are you sure, Jin-Ho?" "Check the mining vessels in the outer system." "Already did." "This is something else. The computer is trying to translate now." But his voice trailed off as new data scrolled across his screen. "Director, I think you should come see this." Now, by the time Park arrived 10 minutes later, 2 more communication specialists had joined Jin-Ho. They all stared silently at the main display where the computer was processing the incoming transmission. "It's definitely artificial," said Yuna, the systems linguist. "And it's not random. There are repeating patterns, almost like..." She paused, her eyes widening. "Like an emergency beacon." The computer chimed, partial translation available. The room fell silent as broken phrases appeared on screen. "URGNT, HELP, under ATTACK, HFY, RS, 2 or DNATES FOLO." "Could this be a prank?" Park asked, but her voice lacked conviction. Jin-Ho shook his head. "The signal is coming from deep space, Director. No human ship has gone that far." The computer continued processing, and more translated text appeared. "Ship DESIGNATION, LIGHBRINGER, SURVI GORS, 26, Life Support FAILNG, PURSUID BVI, DNGR, WARNANG2LO." Along with the text came a series of stellar coordinates, a location in nearby interstellar space. "My God," whispered Yuna. "It's a distress call." "From aliens," Jin-Ho added, his voice barely audible. The computer chimed again. "Audio component identified." Attempting reconstruction. What came next would haunt Jin-Ho for the rest of his life. The sound that filled the room wasn't like any language he had ever heard. It was high-pitched, with clicks and whistles interspersed with deeper tones. But the emotion behind it needed no translation. It was pure terror. Park was the first to recover. "Send this to Earth Command. Now. Priority Alpha." Jin-Ho's hands trembled as he established the quantum link to Earth. "What do I tell them?" "Tell them." Park paused, looking at the coordinates still streaming in. "Tell them we are not alone. And tell them to hurry." Within hours, the entire solar system was on alert. The United Earth Defense Fleet, a force that had never faced an enemy beyond routine piracy in the asteroid belt, scrambled to prepare for humanity's first contact with alien life. The translation team worked around the clock. As more of the message became clear, a chilling picture emerged. The aliens, who called themselves the Ilari, were refugees. Their ship had been damaged in an attack. They were fleeing from something they called the Harvesters, a predatory species that had destroyed their homeworld. 3 days after the initial transmission, the Ilari sent images. Their ship was badly damaged, with huge sections torn away. The beings themselves had 4 limbs and elongated heads with large expressive eyes. But what struck Jin-Ho most was how scared they looked, huddled in the remains of their vessel, sending desperate pleas into the void. "They didn't just happen to find us," Yuna said, as they studied the images. "They were looking for help. Any help." The final part of the Ilari transmission arrived a week after the first signal. It was a warning, sent not just to save themselves but to alert humanity. "The Harvesters FOLO. They consume LL. They will find you 2O. PRPARE. HITE. Fight. As the warning echoed through command centers across Earth and its colonies, humanity faced a stark reality. They were not alone in the universe, and their first contact would not be a peaceful meeting of minds, but a desperate rescue mission, and possibly preparation for war. For Jin-Ho, staring at the alien faces on his screen, one thing was clear. Humanity's age of innocence was over, and whatever came next would change them forever. Captain Haynewell stood on the bridge of the UES Vigilant as the massive warship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The vessel shuddered slightly, its engines adjusting to normal space. Through the main view screen, Haynewell saw nothing but stars at first. Then the ship's sensors detected the wreckage. "Full stop. Deploy defensive shields," Haynewell ordered, her voice calm despite the tension gripping the bridge. "Begin scanning for survivors." The Vigilant was humanity's most advanced military vessel, a kilometer-long behemoth armed with railguns, missile arrays, and energy weapons that had never been fired outside of testing. Until 3 days ago, when the distress signal reached Earth, many had questioned the need for such powerful warships. Now, as they approached the alien wreckage, no one was questioning anymore. "Captain, I'm detecting a power source within the debris field," reported Chief Sensor Officer Jisoo. "It appears to be the remains of a ship approximately 1.5 kilometers in length. Life support systems are failing, but still functioning in parts of the vessel." Haynewell nodded. "Any signs of other ships in the area?" "Negative, Captain. We're alone." Haynewell touched the communication panel on her chair. "Bridge to Medical Bay. Dr. Sangmin, prepare your team for possible alien physiology. We don't know what we'll find out there." "Understood, Captain," came the reply. "Medical teams standing by." Haynewell turned to her first officer. "Tae-young, assemble a boarding party. Full environment suits and defensive weapons only. I want them ready in 15 minutes." As the crew prepared, Haynewell studied the alien vessel. It had once been beautiful, That much was clear even from the wreckage. Its design suggested flowing curves and organic shapes, unlike the more angular human ships. But now it floated in pieces, huge sections torn away as if by enormous claws. Whatever did this has technology far beyond ours, Tae-young said quietly, looking at the damage assessment. Hanul didn't respond. She was thinking the same thing. The boarding team departed in 3 shuttles, crossing the empty space between the ships. Hanul watched from the bridge as they docked with the still intact section of the alien vessel. Team leader Jun reporting in, came the voice over the comm. We've established a seal with the alien ship. Atmosphere is thin but breathable. Proceeding inside. For the next 20 minutes, the bridge crew watched through the helmet cameras as the team made their way through dark corridors. The alien ship's interior was damaged but showed signs of advanced technology. Walls that glowed faintly with internal light, control panels made of unknown materials. Captain, we found them, Jun finally reported. His camera view shifted to show a large chamber where several alien beings huddled together. Hamul leaned forward, her breath catching. The aliens were tall and slender, with 4 arms and large, compound eyes that dominated their faces. Their skin was a pale blue, covered in patterns that might have been tattoos or natural markings. They wore simple clothing, torn and damaged in places. One of the aliens stepped forward cautiously, holding up a small device. I think it's trying to communicate, Jun said. The device in the alien's hand glowed, and a series of musical tones filled the comm channel. After a moment, the tones shifted into broken, heavily accented human language. Help, survivors. 12 only, from hundreds. Hanul exchanged glances with her officers. The alien device was translating, adapting to human speech patterns in real time. Tell them we're here to help, Hanul ordered. Ask if they can be moved to our ship. Over the next 3 hours, the medical team carefully transported the 12 survivors to the Vigilant. The aliens were weak but cooperative, allowing themselves to be guided to the ship's medical bay, where Dr. Sangmin had prepared special quarters based on atmospheric readings from their vessel. Hanul met them there, accompanied only by her first officer and a security detail that remained discreetly in the background. The tallest of the aliens approached Hanul. Its translation device now worked more smoothly after exposure to more human speech. I am Dune, ambassador of the Nari Collective, it said, its voice melodic despite the translator. We thank you for answering our call when all hope seemed lost. I am Captain Hanul of the United Earth Defense Fleet, she replied. We received your distress signal and came as quickly as we could. Dune's compound eyes reflected the light strangely. You took great risk. The Harvesters, what you would call the cruel empire, may still be nearby. Tell us about them, Hanul said. What happened to your ship? To your people? The medical bay fell silent as Dune began to speak. Through the translator, the alien told a story that chilled everyone present. The Nari were peaceful explorers and traders who had encountered the cruel 3 solar cycles ago. Without warning or provocation, the cruel had attacked the Nari homeworld. They did not conquer, Dune explained, its 4 hands moving in complex patterns that seemed to express emotion. They harvested. Our people, our resources, our knowledge, all taken. Billions dead. Those who survived were hunted across the stars. Why? Hanul asked. What do they want? The cruel believe they are the only species worthy of existence, Dune replied. All others are resources to be used. They take what they need, then destroy what remains. Tae-young stepped forward. How many ships do they have? What kind of weapons? Dune's translator hummed as it processed the questions. Hundreds of warships, each larger than yours. Weapons that can crack planets. They are ancient and ruthless. Hanul processed this information, her mind racing through implications, and they've never encountered humans before. No, Dune said. Then the alien asked a question that made Hanul's blood run cold. Your species, Has it encountered others before us? No, Haynul admitted. You are the first intelligent alien life we have met. At this, all 12 Neri survivors reacted visibly. Their compound eyes widened, and they made a sound like rushing wind that the translators didn't convert. Doom stepped closer to Haynul. Then you must warn your people immediately. The Cruel will come for you next. They always do. They can detect faster than light travel. They will know your civilization exists. We're prepared to defend ourselves, Haynul said, though she wondered if that was true after hearing about the Cruel's capabilities. Doom's translator paused, as if the alien was considering its words carefully. The Neri were not a warrior species. Perhaps your people are different. We will share what we know of Cruel technology and tactics. It may help you prepare. As Haynul escorted the Nari ambassador to quarters prepared for the refugees, Doom looked out a viewport at the stars. We searched for any civilization that might help us, the alien said quietly. We found you just in time. But I fear we have also doomed you by coming here. Haynul watched the alien's reflection in the viewport glass. Or perhaps you've saved us by warning us. She didn't say what she was truly thinking, that humanity had just been thrust into a war they never knew existed, against an enemy they had never met, with weapons they might not be able to match. But unlike the peaceful Neri, humans had a long history of warfare. And nothing united humans like a common enemy. The first warning came from the Deep Space Monitoring Station on Triton, Neptune's largest moon. The technicians there detected a massive energy surge at the edge of the solar system. Before they could send a detailed report, their transmissions cut off completely. Hours later, the devastation became clear. Neptune's research colonies, home to over 15,000 scientists and their families, had vanished. Where thriving habitats once orbited the blue giant, only debris remained, scattered like dust across the planet's rings. They're here, said Admiral Ta-1, his face grim as he studied the incoming reports. He stood in the command center of the orbital defense platform above Earth, surrounded by military leaders from every nation. For 6 months, they had prepared for this moment. Now it had arrived. The Cruel fleet appeared on long-range sensors, moving slowly but steadily toward the inner solar system. 80 massive warships, each one dwarfing humanity's largest vessels. Their hulls were black and jagged, resembling the exoskeletons of enormous insects. Open a channel to all Earth forces, Ta-1 ordered. On screens across the solar system, on ships, stations, and planetary bases, the Admiral's face appeared. Behind him stood a small group of blue-skinned aliens, the Neri survivors who had warned humanity and spent the last 6 months helping them prepare. This is Admiral Ta-1. The enemy has entered our solar system and destroyed the Neptune colonies. All units moved to defense positions according to Operation Bulwark. Across the solar system, humanity's forces mobilized. The Saturn Line, a network of automated defense platforms hidden among the gas giants' rings, powered up their weapons. The Jupiter fleet, 30 warships sheltered behind the massive planet, began moving into attack positions. The Mars Defense Grid, a series of ground-based railguns and missile batteries, ran final system checks. And in Earth orbit, the last line of defense, 50 warships and 100 orbital platforms, prepared for the possibility that all outer defenses would fail. The Cruel message arrived 12 hours after the destruction of Neptune's colonies. It displayed on every communication device in the solar system, overriding all security protocols. The alien that appeared on screen resembled a mantis with dark, armored skin and multifaceted eyes. When it spoke, the voice was artificially translated, flat and emotionless. Humans of Earth, your existence has been noted by the Cruel Imperium. Your technology and resources are now property of the Imperium. Surrender your planets and serve as labor, or face immediate extinction. You have 12 hours to respond. In the UN Emergency Council, Earth's leaders gathered to formulate a response. The debate was short. For once, Every nation agreed. Surrender was not an option. Earth's reply was delivered by the president of the United Earth Council, a woman named Minje who had once been a history professor before the crisis. "We have received your terms," she said, looking directly into the camera. "Humanity rejects them completely. This solar system is our home. We will defend it. We suggest you leave while you still can." In the command center, Admiral Ta-1 watched the transmission go out. Beside him, Dune, the Nari ambassador, clicked softly. "No species has ever defied the cruel so directly," the alien said. "They will be enraged." "Good," Ta-1 replied. "Angry enemies make mistakes." The cruel attacked exactly when their ultimatum expired. Their fleet split into 3 groups, one heading for Saturn, one for Jupiter, and one straight for Mars and Earth. "They're following standard cruel attack patterns," Doom observed. "They always divide their forces to overwhelm multiple targets simultaneously." Ta-1 nodded. "Then our strategy may work." The battle began at Saturn. The Krull ships fired energy weapons that melted through the hidden defense platforms. But before they could be destroyed, the platforms launched thousands of small, fast-moving projectiles, a technology adapted from the Nari, but enhanced by human engineers. The projectiles weren't missiles or bombs. They were drones, each one carrying a quantum entanglement device. As they attached to the Krull ships, they created artificial wormholes, tiny, unstable tears in space that lasted just seconds. But seconds were enough. Parts of the Krull ships simply vanished, the matter transferred to empty space thousands of kilometers away. The Krull fleet at Saturn lost 7 ships before retreating. The victory was short-lived. At Jupiter, the human fleet engaged in direct combat and suffered heavy losses. 15 ships destroyed in the first exchange. But they had never expected to win, only to delay. Saturn Group is regrouping. Jupiter Group is advancing but damaged. Mars Group is approaching the defense grid, reported the sensor officer. Ta-1 touched a console. "All ships, execute Phase 2. The human vessels that had survived the Jupiter engagement didn't retreat toward Earth as the Krull expected. Instead, they accelerated toward the Sun, using its gravity to slingshot toward the Krull ships approaching Mars. At Mars, the ground-based defenses opened fire. Railguns launched projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, punching through Krull shields. Missile swarms darkened the sky, each one carrying warheads designed with Nari helped to disrupt the Krull's energy fields. 3 more Krull ships fell, but 14 remained in the Mars attack group, and they returned fire with devastating effect. The largest human cities on Mars, New Shanghai, Olympus City, and Mariner Valley, were hit by energy weapons that turned the soil to glass. Millions died in seconds. On Earth, people watched in horror as Mars burned. But Admiral Ta-1 had expected this too. The real plan was already in motion. From hidden bases on Phobos and Deimos, Mars's small moons, a new kind of weapon launched. The Nari called them Mind Hunters, autonomous units that targeted the command centers of Krull ships. Once attached, they'd broadcast frequencies that disrupted Krull nervous systems, effectively paralyzing them. 5 more Krull ships went dark, drifting aimlessly as their crews convulsed in their command chairs. "They're regrouping," Doom said, watching the tactical display. "This has never happened before. The Krull always win the first engagement." Ta-1 didn't smile. The cost had been too high for celebration. But he knew that humanity had just done something remarkable. They had surprised the Krull. As the remaining Krull ships gathered for a final push toward Earth, Admiral Ta-1 opened a channel to all human forces. His words were brief but powerful. "For thousands of years, we fought each other. Today, we fight as one. Today, we show the stars what happens when you threaten our home." Across the solar system, humanity prepared for the final battle. They had lost millions, but they had also done what the Nari thought impossible. They had hurt the Krull. Now they would show them that humans didn't just fight to survive. They fought to win. The cruel Supreme Commander, a towering figure with chitin armor and multiple limbs, watched the holographic display of Earth with cold compound eyes. 3 days of battle had cost the Imperium 23 ships, more losses than they had suffered in their last 5 conquests combined. These humans are more resourceful than expected. The commander clicked to his second. But they cannot withstand a direct assault on their homeworld. Prepare the landing craft. The remaining cruel warships took position around Earth, their massive hulls casting shadows over cities below. Dropships launched from their hangar bays, thousands of them, descending toward the planet's surface. On the orbital defense platform, Admiral Ta-1 watched the invasion begin. "They're following standard cruel invasion protocol," said Dune, the Nari ambassador. "First wave targets military installations, second wave secures population centers." Ta-1 nodded. "Let them come." As the cruel dropships entered Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. The planet's magnetic field, always naturally present, suddenly intensified 1,000-fold. The cruel ship's navigation systems failed, sending hundreds of dropships veering off course. "Magnetic field amplifiers at full power," reported a technician. 80% of enemy dropships affected. This was just the first surprise. The technology had been developed in secret, based on Nari science, but taken in directions the peaceful aliens had never considered. Humanity had spent centuries building weapons to use against itself. Now those weapons were turned outward. The dropships that made it through the magnetic disruption faced another challenge. Clouds of nanodrones that attached to their hulls and burrowed inside, disabling systems, and in some cases, venting the atmosphere. Thousands of cruel troops died before reaching the ground. But enough made it through to begin the invasion. Cruel forces landed in coordinated strikes across Earth. New York, Beijing, Moscow, Nairobi, Rio de Janeiro, Sydney. They expected to find civilian populations cowering in fear. Instead, they found cities that had been preparing for war for 6 months. In New York, the cruel landed in Central Park, expecting to establish a forward command post. Instead, they found the park had been converted into an elaborate trap. The ground beneath their landing craft gave way, dropping them into underground chambers where waiting special forces attacked from all sides. In Beijing, the ancient city had been partially evacuated, leaving behind automated defense systems hidden in historical buildings. Cruel troops advancing through the streets were picked off by snipers using rifles with smart bullets that could change direction mid-flight to find weak spots in cruel armor. But the most surprising resistance came in the world's harshest environments, places the cruel had dismissed as uninhabitable or strategically unimportant. In Siberia, the cruel established a base near abandoned human settlements. During the first night, Arctic Special Forces moved across the frozen landscape on silent sleds. They wore white adaptive camouflage that not only blended with the snow but also masked their heat signatures. The cruel never saw them coming. By morning, the base was silent, its occupants eliminated without a single human casualty. In the Sahara Desert, a cruel landing force set up a communications array. Within hours, a sandstorm appeared. But this was no natural phenomenon. Microscopic drones, millions of them, created an artificial storm that shredded the cruel equipment and jammed their signals. When the storm cleared, desert fighters emerged from hidden bunkers, wearing exosuits that enhanced their strength to match the physically superior cruel. Jai-Ho, now a communications officer on the orbital platform, monitored the battle reports flowing in from around the world. "Admiral," he called out, "ground forces report cruel troops are showing signs of disorganization. They're not adapting to our countermeasures." Ta-1 exchanged looks with Dune. The Nari clicked thoughtfully. "The cruel have a hierarchical command structure," Dune explained. "Lower ranks cannot make decisions without authorization from superiors. It is efficient when things go as planned, but terrible when faced with the unexpected," Ta-1 finished. "And humans specialize in the unexpected." The Admiral opened a channel to all Earth forces. Push the advantage. Don't give them time to regroup. Across Earth, humanity pressed forward. In India, engineers had modified agricultural machinery into makeshift combat vehicles that now surrounded cruel positions. In coastal regions, naval special forces emerged from the seas using breathing systems that left no bubbles, silently eliminating cruel sentries. On the 7th day of the ground invasion, the cruel Supreme Commander received reports that made no sense. 60% of ground forces were not responding. Those that did reported being attacked using methods they had never encountered. Sound weapons that disrupted their neural systems, electromagnetic pulses targeted to the specific frequency of their communications, even modified wildlife that attacked cruel troops while leaving humans alone. These creatures fight like nothing we have faced, the commander told his war council. They have no unified military, no standard tactics, yet they coordinate perfectly. Each region adapts differently, using the environment against us. In low Earth orbit, the human fleet had been gathering strength. Ships emerged from hidden shipyards on the far side of the moon. Vessels that had been under construction for months, incorporating Nari technology with human innovation. All ships report ready, Admiral, said Captain Hanuel, now commanding the rebuilt UES Vigilant. Taiwan nodded. Begin Operation Sunburst. The 50 human warships moved into formation and accelerated toward Jupiter, seemingly retreating. The cruel fleet, seeing an opportunity, began pursuit. What they didn't realize was that this was exactly what humanity wanted. As the human fleet reached Jupiter's orbit, they executed a complex maneuver, using the gas giant's gravity to slingshot back toward the pursuing cruel ships at incredible speed. And as they did, they released their secret weapons. Antimatter torpedoes, technology thought theoretical until the Nari provided the missing pieces. The torpedoes streaked toward the cruel fleet, their engines pushing them to velocities that made them nearly impossible to track. When they detonated, they didn't simply explode. They created temporary holes in the fabric of space itself. Cruel ships weren't destroyed. Portions of them simply ceased to exist. The matter converted to energy in microsecond flashes brighter than the sun. 15 more cruel ships vanished in the attack. The remainder, disorganized and damaged, began a retreat toward the outer solar system. On Earth, cruel ground forces suddenly found themselves cut off from orbital support and command. What had been a difficult invasion became a desperate fight for survival. The cruel Supreme Commander, watching his forces crumble, made an unprecedented decision. For the first time in recorded history, the cruel Imperium would abandon a conquest. Full retreat, he ordered. All forces returned to ships immediately. As the